Good morning, BC. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning in Trenton, Ontario. Hot as hell outside. That's why I love it in my basement. Um, this is part 5 in my series, The Greatest 100 Albums of All Time. Glen Kellaway here, also known as your low-end music freak on Instagram. Part 5 is from number 60 up to number 51. Part 6 is where it's going to get exciting when we get into the top 50. There's some great albums that I'm going to show you today that I've picked. Arguably, some of them could be anyone's top 10. They're great albums. Just a bit of a recap on how I arrived at this 100. I have approximately 2,400 titles in my collection. I have them all listed on an Excel spreadsheet. Went through each title and determined whether it should be considered. I made a short list of somewhere around 150 albums, and from there I chopped it down to 100 and then spent many hours moving things around and putting them in place. And to be quite honest with you, I look at the list every day and I'm still moving things around a little bit. Not moving the top 25 necessarily, but I'd say this grouping definitely has switched around a little bit. Some have moved into it, some have moved up higher. So anyway, let's get at it. That's number 60 we're going to start with. This is an excellent album and also my favorite album cover. I actually have it framed on my wall in my other music room. Cream, Disraeli Gears. That is my pick as the best album cover of all time. This album was released in 1967. The cover was designed by a guy who lived in Eric Clapton's apartment building. They were friends from that, and he was a bit of an artist, so Eric got him to design the cover. Now, the interesting thing, there's always a Beatles connection. Robert Whittaker took the photographs of the band that are interspersed all through the album. That's their Robert Whittaker photographs, who's a renowned Beatle photographer. This album had the hit song Sunshine of Your Love on it. Great psychedelic album. 67, The Summer of Love. A lot of great psychedelic albums came out then. I don't know what else I have to say about this album other than I love it. Number 60. Okay, it's interesting. I don't even know how I did this. Number 59 is an album that I feel competes with this album, released at the same time, and the same blues rock trio thing. The two guitar players were probably the two best guitar players of that era, arguably. Are You Experienced? Jimi Hendrix Experience. Man, when this album came out, it was pretty mind-blowing, just like Disraeli Gears was. But Disraeli Gears was the second Cream album, so didn't have the same impact in that regard. But this is crazy how good this is. Purple Haze is on this. Hey Joe is a big song for. If I can tell a story, when I was in grade 9, there was a kid in my class. His name was Steve Pilling. His brothers Ed and Ed Pilling, and I can't remember his other brother's name now. Anyway, they went to England. They were musicians. Went to England and made some connections over there. They ended up playing with Cat Stevens for a bit before he was well known. Anyway, when they came home, they brought the 45 of Hey Joe with them, and the teacher let Steve play it in our class. They had a little portable record player there, and we got a chance to hear Hey Joe before pretty much anyone else here heard it, and it was pretty cool. Anyway, so when Jimi Hendrix Experience was coming to Toronto, played at CNE Coliseum, I tried so hard to get tickets. I spent the whole day with my buddy downtown running around at record stores where they were supposed to be on sale, and just couldn't get a ticket. I eventually saw Jimmy in 1969 at Maple Leaf Gardens, so real great concert experience for me. But anyway, Jimi Hendrix Experience. Are You Experienced? Coming in at number 59. At 58, an album that came out in 1971 and wasn't that well received, if I remember correctly, but now I think it's considered arguably his best album. Ram, Paul and Linda McCartney. This is a terrific album. I absolutely love it. I think it's Paul's best album. Almost 1 and 1A with this and McCartney. The first two are just fantastic. The hit on this album, Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey. It also kind of created a bit of adversity with John Lennon on the song Too Many People, which is the opening track. Too many people preaching promises, and John took exception to it, thought it was about him. He ended up writing How Do You Sleep, and it just turned into a little musical battle there between the two of them where they had their little bickering through songs. But Ram has really stood the test of time. It's a great album. 1971, number 58. Okay, number 57. I freaking love this album. I love this artist, Donovan Leitch. So this is Sunshine Superman, released in 1966. Great psychedelic album. This moved Donovan in from just the folky kind of guitar harmonica stuff to a full band, psychedelic band. I believe Jimmy Page played on a couple of the songs on this album, but this album has Season of the Witch on it, Sunshine Superman, which is a killer song, The Fat Angel, which was written for Mama Cass Elliot, but it also mentions Jefferson Airplane, because Donovan was in in California before when he was writing this album, and I guess saw the San Francisco scene and all that, and mentioned Jefferson Airplane. Fly Jefferson Airplane, get you there on time. Jefferson Airplane ended up doing a version of it on their live album, Bless Its Pointed Little Head. But this is a great psych album. There's not a bad song on it. If you're interested in that era of music, you should check this one out. Great album. That is number 57. 56. Love this band, love this artist. James Gang, Rides Again. This was released in 1970. This is James Gang's second album. Great album from start to finish. It's got Funk 49 on it. Also, I guess the interesting story about this album is the song The Bomber / Closet Queen, which has a long guitar instrumental in it. Part of the instrumental on the original recording was Bolero. Now, the family that owns the rights to the composer of Bolero objected and threatened a lawsuit that it was being put on this album. And they had to, in future pressings, edit the song. So a lot of times when you buy the James Gang Rides Again album, you might get a little shorter version of The Bomber and Closet Queen, and sometimes you might get the longer version of The Bomber and Closet Queen. This particular issue is the MoFi SACD original master recording, which sounds absolutely phenomenal. It has the longer version, but this is a great album. You like guitars? Joe Walsh, James Gang, Rides Again. Number 55, another incredible debut album. Incredible. Pink Floyd, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Wow, what an album this is. Man, I remember when this came out, listening to it, it was just so different than anything else I ever heard. This was kind of mind-blowing. That first song, Astronomy Domain, was so cool. Great album. Interstellar Overdrive is on this album, another great song. This is Syd Barrett's Pink Floyd. Syd wrote 8 of the songs out of the 11 on this album. This was the only album that Syd was on the whole album for. Produced by Norman Smith, another It always goes back to the Beatles somewhere along the way. Um, so, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, great album. Number 55. Number 54, one of my favorite bands, one of my second favorite guitar player of all time. The Allman Brothers, live at the Fillmore. This album was released in 1971. The Allman Brothers had two studio albums, Idlewild South and the self-titled Allman Brothers album. I don't recall them doing very well. I had never seen those albums, heard of them. I think they had pockets of success with them, obviously, where they were playing in the States, but they really didn't do much. And then they released this album, and this put them on the map. What a great live album. Probably my choice for the best live album ever made. Live at the Fillmore. I first heard this album in my high school. We had, in our library, they had a few records in there. I don't know who in the library decided to bring in records to smoke pot to, but somebody did. And so went up there looking through the records, and I saw this album, and I put it on with headphones and went, oh my God, this is killer. Dickie Betts and Duane Allman, Greg Allman's great soulful vocals. Oh, this is just the best. Allman Brothers live at the Fillmore. Okay, we are coming up to number 53. This is a great artist that everybody loves. My favorite album by him, David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust. This is David's fifth album, released in 1972. This put Bowie on the map worldwide, I think. He'd already had the hit of Space Oddity, but his albums I don't think were really that well received in North America. I can't speak for Britain, but this album broke him big time. It's still a great album. It stood the test of time. It rocks. I have to give big thumbs up to Mick Ronson. Mick Ronson made Bowie in these days. I'm sorry. I know Bowie's a major talent and wrote the songs and came up with the characters and everything, but Mick Ronson's guitar playing on this album is phenomenal. The only time I saw Mick Ronson was playing with Dylan at the Rolling Thunder review shows. But a man who died too soon. But Mick Ronson, David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust. Number 53. We're down to our last two. Number 52. The Hits Machine, John Fogerty. Cosmos Factory. What a frickin' album this is. This is CCR's fifth studio album. They recorded and released 5 albums in 2 years, from 68 to 70. Incredible. And how many hits? It's just unbelievable. This album could have been a greatest hits album. Traveling Band is on this album. Looking Out My Back Door is on this album. Run Through the Jungle is on this album. Up Around the Bend is on this album. Who'll Stop the Rain is on this album. I Heard It Through the Grapevine is on this album. And As Long as I Can See the Light is on this album. That's anybody else's greatest hits album. Cosmos Factory, just incredible. What a hits machine John Fogerty is. Number 52. Last but not least, I'm not sure if people will agree with me on this, but I am a huge Jackson Browne fan. I think Jackson Browne is probably behind Bob Dylan and Paul Simon, the best songwriter ever come out of the U.S. His lyrics are just incredible. This is For Every Man. This is Jackson's second album. It has his version of Take It Easy on it, which is a co-write with Glenn Frey. Killer record. Kudos to David Lindley. This is the first time David Lindley appears with Jackson Browne, and he played with Jackson for a few albums after this. Um, so this album is a lot of acoustic stuff. I think there's kind of one rocker on it called Redneck Friend. A lot of acoustic stuff, and the songs all weave together with David Lindley's beautiful lead playing in the background. He's just such an incredible musician, David Lindley. And if you haven't heard this album, it came out in 1973. Beautiful, beautiful record, great songs. These Days is on this, which Jackson wrote when he was 16 years old, was covered by Greg Allman. The people that appeared on this album with him: David Crosby, Joni Mitchell, Bonnie Raitt, Glenn Frey, and I didn't know this until recently, Elton John. Elton John plays on the only, what you would call a rocker on this album, called Redneck Friend, and he's called on this album Rockaday Johnny, because they couldn't use Elton's real name because of, I guess, label contracts. So that's kind of an interesting little tidbit. I'm trying to see if anybody else is on this album. Leland Sklar's a bass player. You don't get better than that. Michael Utley, who played with Jimmy Buffett. Jim Keltner on drums. Who else is on here? That's about it for name players, I think, which is good enough. Oh, Sneaky Pete Kleino plays pedal steel. Great album. Check it out. So that's number 51. Excuse me. That's it for part 5. I hope everybody has a great day. Leafs Canadians tonight. Go Leafs. And we'll see you very soon with part 6.